Emily smoothed the front of her dress with nervous hands as she took her seat at the long oak dining table. It was her first time joining her husband's family for a big dinner since they'd been married, and she wanted everything to go right. The room buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the comforting aroma of grilled steaks and freshly baked rolls. Her mother-in-law stood at the head of the table, regal and sharp-eyed, holding the serving platter as though it were a crown. One by one, she placed thick, juicy steaks onto each plate, her sons, her daughters, even her brother's new girlfriend who had only just joined the family. Forks clinked against china, the scent of buttered potatoes wafted in the air, and Emily's stomach tightened in anticipation. But when the platter reached her place, her mother-in-law hesitated. Her lips curved into a polite but cold smile. Then, with a deliberate flick of her wrist, she passed Emily's plate by and set the last steak in front of someone else. Emily froze. A lump formed in her throat as she glanced around, hoping someone, anyone, would speak up. But the family carried on, talking and laughing, as though nothing unusual had happened. Desserts soon followed, rich slices of chocolate cake, each one topped with whipped cream and strawberries. Again, every plate was filled, except hers. Emily sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, cheeks burning. She wasn't just hungry, she felt invisible, unwanted. In that moment, she realized she was being tested, and how she chose to respond would matter far more than the meal she had been denied. Emily stared at her empty plate, her stomach knotting tighter with every bite taken around her. The clatter of silverware and hum of cheerful voices felt deafening, like a cruel reminder that she didn't belong. She tried to smile, tried to pretend it didn't sting, but the ache in her chest grew heavier by the second. It wasn't about the steak or the cake anymore. It was about being deliberately left out, about sitting at a table surrounded by people who should feel like family but instead made her feel like an outsider. This wasn't the first time. Memories flickered in her mind, being forgotten in family photos, having her opinions brushed aside in conversations, subtle comments that reminded her she wasn't one of them. She had always swallowed the hurt, convincing herself it was easier to stay quiet, easier to keep the peace. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the rejection was too blatant to ignore. She felt heat rising in her eyes, but she blinked it back, refusing to let anyone see her cry. Her mother-in-law may have thought she had humiliated her, but Emily told herself she wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Still, inside, the question echoed, why me? What did I do wrong to deserve this? She lowered her gaze, gripping the napkin in her lap like a lifeline. Deep down, she knew she had a choice: either let this moment break her spirit or find a way to rise above it. She just didn't know yet what that would look like. Emily shifted in her chair, the weight of silence pressing down on her. Every laugh from the table felt like another brick added to the wall separating her from the rest of the family. She wanted to run, to disappear, but something inside her whispered, don't let this moment define you. Then, through the window, she noticed movement. Just beyond the warm glow of the dining room lights, their elderly neighbor, Mr. Harris, was shuffling slowly past the house. He lived alone at the end of the street. Emily had seen him many times, always by himself, sometimes stopping to pet the neighbor's dog or sit on a bench with a distant look in his eyes. Her heart tugged. In that instant, she realized she wasn't the only one who knew what it felt like to be left out. Quietly, she stood and excused herself, ignoring the raised eyebrows around the table. Slipping into the kitchen, she opened the bag she'd brought along earlier. Homemade bread and a small container of pasta salad she'd prepared just in case. She gathered it up, wrapped it neatly, and stepped out into the cool evening air. Mr. Harris, she called softly. The old man turned, surprised. His eyes softened as she held out the food. I thought maybe you could use some company. He smiled, the kind of smile that came from deep gratitude, and together they sat on the porch steps, sharing the simple meal under the quiet night sky. For the first time that evening, Emily felt a warmth that had nothing to do with food. It came from connection, from choosing kindness when bitterness would have been easier. The night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of grilled food from inside the house, but Emily didn't mind anymore. She sat on the porch steps beside Mr. Harris, the warm glow of the kitchen window spilling onto the grass. The simple plate of bread and pasta salad rested between them, and they ate slowly, savoring both the food and the company. Mr. Harris chuckled as he told her about his late wife, how she used to bake pies for the entire neighborhood every Thanksgiving, even for people she barely knew. His voice cracked with both sorrow and joy as he remembered her kindness. Emily listened intently, her heart swelling. She realized that in giving him her food, she had received something far greater, a story, a friendship, a reminder of what true family should feel like. They laughed together under the stars, and Emily felt lighter than she had all evening. For the first time that night, she wasn't invisible. She was seen, heard, valued. Inside, faces began to appear at the dining room window. Her husband's siblings leaned in, whispering to one another as they watched Emily and Mr. Harris smile and share their meal. Even her mother-in-law glanced out, her expression hard to read, perhaps confusion, perhaps guilt. Emily didn't look their way. She didn't need their approval anymore. Out here, with nothing but a humble plate of food and an open heart, she had found the belonging she had been searching for all night. When Emily finally stepped back inside, the dining room had grown quieter. Conversation slowed, forks rested midair. All eyes turned toward her, as if they'd just realized what had happened. She carried herself with calm grace, her head held high, no trace of bitterness in her expression. Her husband gave her a questioning look, but she simply smiled, the kind of smile that comes from inner peace, not from winning a battle. Her mother-in-law cleared her throat, shifting uncomfortably in her chair. For the first time that evening, there was no smugness in her eyes, only the flicker of someone confronted by their own pettiness. The other family members avoided Emily's gaze, shame softening the edges of their laughter. But Emily didn't need an apology. She had already found something better. She had turned a moment of cruelty into an act of compassion. She had chosen connection over resentment. Later, as the family rose from the table, her husband's youngest sister slipped up beside her and whispered, "That was really kind of you, what you did for Mr. Harris." The words were small, but they carried weight. Seeds of change had been planted. Emily left that night not as the outsider her mother-in-law had tried to make her, but as someone stronger, someone whose quiet kindness had spoken louder than any confrontation ever could. And that was her last laugh, not mocking, not spiteful, but victorious in the most powerful way possible. By proving that love and generosity will always sit at the head of the table.